Welcome back to Passions Over Pancakes. My name is Hannah. I am the creator, the host, and the editor of this podcast, and today it is just little old me over here. I have some exciting things coming up, so on Tuesday, definitely be looking out for a podcast with an interviewee, but we're going to talk about all of this in just a second. I just wanted to thank you for being here because your support means the world to me. It is literally you that I come and do this for, and we're going to talk about all this in just a second, with discipline and how it's been a little bit hard over here and trying to do things well and then not doing them at all. That's what this episode is going to be about, is just discipline, and it's going to be probably a pretty quick one, but maybe a lot of us are in the same boat, especially because it's summer and the school is about to start and we're going to have to study our butts off, and it's just a weird season of life right now for I think a lot of us, and so I just wanted to recognize that, and if you are also in a really weird spot, just know that you're not alone, because I'm right there with you, and I know that there are a lot of other people out there that are in just as weird of a spot, and that is what I kind of want to talk about today. So buckle in, I guess. If you are driving, please do buckle in, but grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, grab a muffin, or wash your dishes, do whatever you're doing while you're listening to this podcast. And I hope you enjoy, and I hope that in some way that we might be able to relate to one another in this funky time of life. So let's go ahead and get on with this. So this podcast started in 2020 with a back pocket dream that I had had since high school, and I was really, really, really excited about it, and it was right when I got furloughed from my job, so I had all the time in the world to work on this, and I think that had I been consistent with this podcast for the last 2 years, it would be in a much different spot right now, and I would be obviously a lot more consistent and more disciplined with it, but I wasn't. I wasn't disciplined with it, and I wasn't consistent, and I haven't been consistent with it for the last 2 years. I picked it up, put it back down, I picked it back up, I put it back down, I picked it back up, and I put it back down, and that's happened a couple different times, and I think every time I've picked it up, it's been when I've had a lot on my plate already, and I feel like I have something to prove to myself that I can do this, and this is a project that I want to continue, and that it's something that I owe it to myself to follow through on. And I just have ended up putting so much pressure on myself in the most stressful seasons of my life to be this person that grinds and never stops and just go and doesn't get a break, and that leads to things being wildly, ridiculously unfinished, whether that is the dishes that need to be done, or vacuuming, or spending time with my husband, or doing homework, or this podcast. Things just get pushed to the side, and then I end up doing nothing at all. And I've heard that's probably a sign of burnout. I don't want to speak to that because I don't think that I'm necessarily in the in the realm of being burnt out, but I think this is something that probably all of us can relate to, whether you're in school, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, whether you have a corporate job, or whether you do something creative. I think it's something that we can all relate to, that things just seem like they're going to go really well, and you are so gung-ho and on fire for this thing, and then you end up biting off way more than you can chew and putting more on your plate than you can consume, and all of a sudden you feel like a failure. And I don't like to feel like a failure. I don't know that anybody does like to feel like a failure. And I'm super inspired personally by people who fail and fail and fail, and yet they are failing up. They fail and they learn how to not do something, and then the next time they do it, they learn from it and don't do it that way. Or if they do it the same way, they do something different and tweak it just a little bit, even if it seems like they're doing the same thing. And something really, really cool and amazing comes out of it. And I have not been that person that has failed up, especially in terms of this podcast. I have been the person that has started to attempt to be consistent again with this, and I see all of these other people and other podcasts that are so much more successful and have more viewers and have more engagement than mine does, and I get really discouraged. And then I have to remind myself that I'm not doing it for views, I'm not doing it for engagement, I'm not doing it for money, because trust me, there is no money rolling in right now from this podcast. But sometimes I just get a little bit discouraged. And I compare my chapter 1 of this podcast to chapter 87 of another person's podcast, And that's not fair to myself, because then that causes me to be frustrated and feel like a failure on y'all's end and on my end. And that's not fair to anybody else, because if I feel like a failure, I'm going to mark myself as a failure and think that I am a failure. That is my identity as a failure. And that's just not true. And then that spirals and that snowballs into me being frustrated with myself, and then throwing my hands up and saying, I'm just going to throw in the towel because clearly this isn't working. I'm a failure. This podcast is a failure. This was a dumb idea to begin with. And then I just stop creating altogether, even though I have these backlogs of interviews that I've done that need to be edited and have been needed to have been edited for the last 6 months. And then I get frustrated, and you can probably hear it in my tone. It's because it's a little bit frustrating for myself, because I'm just not disciplined in that aspect. And that's something that I want to change. And if you follow me on Instagram at Passions Over Pancakes, you have seen the 2 or 3 times that I have said that there is going to be a podcast episode uploaded on Tuesday, and then it doesn't get uploaded. And then I kind of just fall to the back burner and hope that nobody notices. And that's not who I want to be. I want to be somebody who is dependable. I want this podcast to be something that you can look forward to every Tuesday. I want this space to be one that is exciting and that we can all learn from, and that is exciting for me and for you. And I'm making it a point here and now, within the last couple of days, but I'm vocalizing it now. I'm making a point to change my attitude from feeling like this is something that I absolutely have to do, and making it something that is enjoyable. Not that this hasn't been enjoyable so far, because it has been very enjoyable. I have very much enjoyed being a part of this space and being able to create, and it's an awesome creative outlet. But I want to change my attitude, and I want to change the way I speak about this podcast and the way that I speak to myself about this podcast, because it has been very much a lot of feeling like this hasn't taken off the way that I wish it would have, and then feeling guilty and frustrated with myself for not being disciplined enough to take the hour a day, 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day to edit in little increments, and then leaving it all for the last minute, and then I get frustrated and overwhelmed, and then nothing ever becomes of it. And like I said before, I want to be somebody that's dependable for my friends, for my husband, for my dog, for you guys as viewers and listeners. I want to be a dependable person. And that's just not something that I have made a priority recently. And that has really been made apparent to me by the amount of times that I just flake out on things. Honestly, I'm going to say it right here and now. I flake out on a lot of things, and not because I don't want to do them, but just because I put myself in such a situation that is so overwhelming, and I bite off more than I can chew. And then all of a sudden I'm so overwhelmed and I can't do anything. It's what's that called? Analysis paralysis, in a way, where you're just so overwhelmed with how many options and things that there are to do that you just end up doing nothing. And I know we've all been there. And it's not a fun place to be in. So all of this to say is, this brings me to what I'm doing right now in terms of motivating myself, is knowing that I need to just launch off of the diving pad, and I can correct later. And I don't need to be doing things out of a sense of motivation, because motivation is fleeting, and I need to be doing things out of discipline. The best athletes in the world don't get up every day and train because they're motivated. They do it because they're disciplined. And while I'm not at all comparing myself to a grand athlete, because have you seen me, I am saying that there are a lot of things in life that just need discipline. This podcast needs discipline. My homework needs discipline. Continuously bettering my relationship with my friends and my husband needs discipline. Anything in life needs discipline, because if you just act on motivation, then it's going to end up like this podcast, where there's an episode and then I disappear for months, and there's an episode and then nothing for months. And it's just not fun that way. It's not fun to not be consistent. And that is what I've started to realize these last couple months, is that it's not fun to not be consistent. And consistency is the key to a lot of things. I need consistency in my quiet time every morning. I need consistency in my gym schedule. I need consistency with my husband. It's a key factor in a lot of things that if you don't have consistency, everything's going to be chaotic. And of course, you can't have consistency all the time. There are things that, come up out of your control that you just can't do anything about. And that's no big deal. You just get back up the next day and try to be as consistent as possible. But I need to be moving out of discipline and not motivation. And hopefully that's something that you can take away as well, is moving out of discipline and not motivation, because I think that's something that I've learned recently that has been a game changer and something that I had never really thought of before. And now that it has been brought to my attention that it is consistency and it is discipline and not motivation, I think the game is going to be changed now that I know this. Does that make sense? Like once you unlock that realization, and once you realize that nobody is stopping you from being consistent, it's entirely you that is the one that is stopping you and holding you back. It's your own voice in your own head that is causing you to not be consistent and have this negative self-talk. If you just nip it in the bud and just change your mindset and change your attitude and change the way you speak to yourself, you can do a lot more with the same amount of hours in the day that everybody else has. That's something huge that I've learned recently. And I'm going to move away from this topic because I know that I could talk about that for a very long time. But all of this is leading me to the topic of 75 hard. So what is 75 hard? What is the purpose? Why are you doing it? All that stuff. We'll totally get into that. But I do want to make it clear that 75 hard isn't necessarily the reason that all of this epiphany, if you will, all of the epiphanies that I've been having over the last couple of weeks and months about consistency and discipline and just trying to better myself and others around me and pull them up with me and fail upwards. 75 hard isn't the reason that those things have come to my mind and have become a practice, but it is helping a lot, I think. So, okay, what is 75 hard, right? 75 hard is a program created by Andy Frisella, and it's essentially 75 days of mental toughness, and it builds that mental discipline. And what it is 75 days of these 5 tasks that you have to do every single day. And if you mess up on one task, then you have to restart at day 1. And these 5 tasks are following any nutrition plans designed with your goals. And along with that, there's 0 alcohol and 0 cheat meals. The second task is completing 2 45-minute workouts every single day, one of which has to be outside. And these 2 workouts have to be at least 3 hours apart. The third task is drinking a gallon of water every single day. The fourth task is reading 10 pages of an educational or self-improvement book every day. And the fifth task is taking a progress picture every single day. Now, in and of themselves, those things don't really sound that difficult, but when you put them all together while you're going to school and or work and or you have a family to tend to, or all 3 of those things, then doing those 5 things can get really difficult. And that's something that I have noticed, of course, is that it has been difficult. But the tasks themselves are easy. The tasks themselves are not difficult, but the hardest part is getting up off of your social media and actually doing them, getting up off the couch, getting up and actually putting things into action. And I am only on day 2 of this, so I'm not gonna try to sound like I am, this person that is totally changed and that I'm a new person and I'm the most fit that I've ever been. No, this is day 2, but I have done this in the past. I didn't get very far. I've never finished 75 hard, but I have done this in the past, and I have noticed that I have felt so much better. Physically, of course, yes, because you're doing a lot of things for your physical self, but mentally, there's so much that you can do. There's so many benefits to having this mental toughness challenge. Because as these 75 days progress and as these very simple tasks begin to get more daunting as my schedule fills up more, then I I know that as I continue to have discipline, after these 75 days are done, I can do anything that I put my mind to. I can wake up those 30 minutes earlier in the morning so that I can read my Bible and have that quiet time and eat a good breakfast. I can make time in my day to exercise, even if I really don't feel like it. I can make time to do healthy habits and to be disciplined. And I'm not going to let that wimpy voice in the back of my head take me down, because if I can have the discipline for 75 days in a row to do these things and to make myself a more mentally tough individual, then that is going to carry with me through the rest of my life, because I'm going to have completed something for 75 days that a lot of people don't do on a daily basis. A lot of people don't read on a daily basis. Some people go days without drinking water. Some people don't take the 45 minutes every day to go on a walk or go exercise, So it's just this mental toughness challenge that is going to, I believe, better myself in a lot of ways as these 75 days progress. And on top of those 5 things that I will be doing with 75 Hard, I am committing myself to taking 30 minutes every single day to do something creative, whether it's this podcast, and more than likely it will be this podcast, 30 minutes a day to work on this podcast, to edit this podcast, or to create some type of content for this podcast, 30 minutes a day to embroider while my husband and I are sitting down and watching a movie, 30 minutes a day to sew something, 30 minutes a day to create a video. 30 minutes a day to do something creative is better than doing nothing creative at all. And I have found that creativity is something that really I need. I really do need. I need to be creative. I need to have that creative outlet. I need to be creating something, whether people will see it or not. I need to be creating something. And that is something that also, totally goes with this mental toughness, because doing 30 minutes of something creative every single day is going to make me push my goals and get closer to my goals and actually be able to attain those goals. And that's huge too, because I can't tell you the last goal that I actually attained, to be totally honest with you. And I am so excited for this season of life. I'm very excited about 75 Hard. And it's just something that it sounds simple and it sounds silly, all of those tasks all together. And it sounds like something that will be It will be tough as school starts and as my hardest semester is upon me. But that doesn't mean that it's not attainable. That doesn't mean that hard things are unable to be done. And I'm not really sure where I'm getting at. I'm not really sure what the point of this whole thing is, other than just to tell you that I am committing myself to being consistent with this podcast. Whether that means that I have a set season of episodes that will go up and then take a break and refresh and rejuvenate and then go back in at it hard. But no matter what, I'm going to be able to communicate that. And I want to actually have a relationship with people that view this podcast and that listen to this podcast, because you are the reason that I'm doing this. You are the reason that this is staying alive, because there are people that listen to it. And I am so appreciative of you, listener, because without this, I would just be a girl at her desk with a towel over her head to mute the sounds and speaking into a microphone for nothing. And while that might still be true, that I might still be just this girl in her office speaking into a microphone for nothing, I know now that even if nobody watches this, I am building that mental toughness and hopefully in one way or another helping somebody realize that their passions are just as important as anybody else's. That's the whole point of this podcast, is your passions are just as important as the person's next to you. You are a human being designed by God who has a passion and a love and a thriving in what you do that makes you passionate, that lights your fire. And you were created that way. And I want to use this as a space to celebrate that creativity and those passions and who you were created to be. That is what this space is entirely about. And how else can we celebrate who you were created to be and who you are in the Lord and what your passions are if we don't put those passions out there? That's the whole point of this platform. So by not putting things out there, then I'm doing a disservice because we can't celebrate what you're passionate about. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me. and maybe that's all that really matters as long as I keep putting out content. But I think that's all I wanted to say. I will be completing 75 Hard sometime in mid-October, and I'm pretty excited about it. Again, it's only day 2, so my fire for this whole thing could be totally gone next week, but I don't want the discipline to be gone next week. I want this to be something that continues and something that I stay passionate about and stay excited about, even when the going gets tough, because I think that this platform can be radically used in some really cool ways, and I might never make a cent off of it, and that's fine, because that is not why I'm doing this. And this is a passion project of mine that passions ebb and flow, and sometimes they're fleeting, but this is something that I want to outlast me, and something that I want to outlast all of us, and something that people can look back on. Even if they're not passionate about this thing that they're interviewed about in 10 years, they can look back on it with fondness and say, that was a really cool opportunity to be able to share my passion with the people that want to listen. So anyways, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me on this little bit of a ramble. I have no script. I didn't even write out pointers of what I wanted to say, but I do appreciate you coming on and listening with me, or listening to me rather. I appreciate you. I hope that you stick around until Tuesday, because we've got some really, really cool things coming, and I pinky promise this time I'm going to be consistent. This Tuesday, I have a really cool interview lined up with my friend Brock, who is going to be talking about Drum Corps International, and I'm very, very excited about that. And the next episode after that is going to be with my one and only father, whom I love so dearly. He just wrote a book, and we're going to be talking all about the book, why you should buy it, why you shouldn't buy it, what is it, who's it for, that kind of stuff. It's going to be pretty exciting. That book comes out on September 13th, so this is kind of the precursor to get you excited for it. And then after that, I have my friend Shelby coming on the podcast, and we're talking about all things small business. And I loved this episode, and I think you're going to love it too. It's all about small businesses, how you can support your small business friends, how you can be your friend's biggest cheerleader. She is one of my favorite people on God's green earth, and I am so excited to share this podcast episode with you. And after that, we also have Boston, who is going to be talking about theater and all things theater, all things that he's doing with script writing and being on the stage and all of that. And after that, we have Sterling Grinnell. And if you don't know who Sterling Grinnell is, please go look him up on social media. He is one of the most well-spoken individuals I have ever met in my life. I'm so blessed with the opportunity to have been able to interview him. He's working really hard on his music. He does fantastic things with videography. He's just an all-around incredible person, and I'm really excited to get that interview out with you as well. So that's kind of what's coming up on Passions Over Pancakes as this semester begins in just a couple of weeks. Again, this is my hardest semester of nursing school yet, and I am going to be doing everything in my power to be getting some things done and bust out some fully edited podcasts before the semester ever even starts. So all I have to do is just upload them and let you know that they are uploaded, maybe get some snippets for social media, but I'm going to stay consistent through this semester, and I'm telling you this right now, and I am very excited about this season of life. I'm very excited that you're along the ride with me. Thank you for being here. I know that this has been a ridiculous and kind of silly and inconsistent ride so far, but I'm very excited about what's coming, and this is me telling you that things are going to be more disciplined from here on out. This is a promise that I'm making to myself and to you as a listener, and I'm very, very excited about what is to come. So thank you again for being here. I appreciate you. Please check out the social media on both Facebook and Instagram. It's at Passions Over Pancakes on both. You can listen to this on Spotify, on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, except for Apple. Still trying to figure that out. Not quite sure how to get my podcast on Apple, but if you know, please let me know. and we can work on this together. But thank you again for being here. I appreciate you, and I will see you on Tuesday.